After listening to my opponent's position on the issue, I would like to reiterate my staunch support for making the legalization of same-sex marriage the top priority of the LGBT civil rights movement. The arguments made in my previous speech can be consolidated into two main ideas, which I would like to emphasize here. For the first, I return to my discussion of the same-sex marriage battle in New York. I again cite this as a prime example of what the legalization of same-sex marriage can do to inspire the LGBT population. In agreement with my opponent, I believe it would be absurd to say that every state would react in the same way New York did to the legalization of same-sex marriage. However, we should be less concerned with how individual states are reacting and more concerned with the reactions of the LGBT community and the proponents of the LGBT civil rights movement within those states. I don't believe the situation in New York should be seen as an example for how other states will react to the legalization of same-sex marriage. Rather, I see it as an example of how the national LGBT community and their allies will react to these legislative measures being taken in their own states. The momentum and morale inherent in this reaction can provide the civil rights movement with exactly what it needs to achieve its goals. On that note, I would again like to express agreement with my opponent, specifically on his statement of the importance of developing an infrastructure for the achievement of these goals. What's more, I believe the legalization of same-sex marriage is the ideal way in which to establish such an infrastructure. My opponent feels that lobbying for hate crimes legislation, adoption rights for same-sex couples, and equal rights in the workplace for LGBT individuals are the more appropriate building blocks. We must ask ourselves, however, if these really are, as he stated, smaller, more achievable goals. What is it about them that makes them more achievable? They still involve the same legal hurdles, the same bigots and firm opposition, the same cultural stigmas to overcome, the same uphill battle. A bottom-up strategy, meanwhile, can still be implemented in the campaign for the legalization of same-sex marriage by focusing on states and regions individually and appealing to local and state senators. Even more significantly, these other goals cited by my opponent, should they be achieved, lack one very important advantage that the legalization of same-sex marriage can provide for the civil rights movement: a special appeal to the population of this country. This brings me to my second point. A campaign is a campaign. Winning over the support of the majority matters. How do you win over the majority of a population? By arguing your position using means that relate to them and their values. America values marriage. Even for those members of the LGBT community seeking to get married, the legalization of same-sex marriage could have enormous benefits simply by the steps it will cause this country to take away from their current alienation of LGBT individuals. And as for those same members, those that my opponent stated deserve the option of domestic partnership, I would say yes, they do deserve the right for marriage alternatives. But on that same note, wouldn't it be great if marriage itself was one of those alternatives? Of course there will be backlash. There will always be backlash. The backlash, provided it's reasonable, is no argument against fighting for the legalization of same-sex marriage. In fact, legalizing same-sex marriage will provide the appropriate morale and national attitude to make combating such backlash all the more possible. And that is why, again, I express my belief that the legalization of same-sex marriage should be the top priority of the LGBT civil rights movement.